Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to deploy a Django app to fly.io. So fly.io is a really easy service to use because you can do everything from the command line to deploy your Django app. And then once you make changes to your app, redeploying will be really simple on the command line. So you don't have to connect to Git or anything like that. You just need to install the command line tool and deploy from there. So we're going to deploy this app. And the basic idea behind this app is it has some static files. It uses a form. I'm going to set up a custom domain for it. And the way that I'm going to go through this video is I'm going to basically do things in the simplest way possible and then view the error that appears once I deploy. And the reason why I do this is because typically with deploying, you're going to have like a ton of errors. So I figure in this video, if I actually show you what those errors are, then you'll be able to recognize them and fix them without having to go through them yourself. If I just made the video straight through where I did everything correctly, then you wouldn't know how to fix any problems that you have. So with that said, let's get into deploying this Django app to fly.io. So the first thing you need to do to deploy an app to Fly is install the Fly command line tool. So if you go here to documentation under resources and then click on the installation guide here, it's going to tell you how to install Fly on different systems. So I'm using Linux, so I just ran this command and it installed Fly for me. So back in my terminal, if I just type Fly, I can see the commands here. So you can use either flyctl or just Fly for short, but you see all the commands here that you can run with the command line tool. So the first command that you want to run is fly auth. So I don't even think it's in this list, but it doesn't matter because it is a command. So fly auth. And then here I see the available commands. So the command that I want to run is login because I need to log into my Fly account before I can actually deploy an app. So fly auth login. And it's going to create this URL for me. So I'll just click on it. And it allows me to connect my terminal to my account. So I just have to click on that button and then go back here and it says successfully logged in. So to begin the process of deploying, let's try Fly launch. So this will initialize a Fly project so I can deploy my app as a Fly app. So Fly launch, and we notice here it says scanning source code. So let me make this a little bigger. We see scanning source code, could not find a Docker file nor detect runtime or framework from source code. And that's not what we want. So we want to completely stop the process here because it should be able to detect that we have a Django app. So let me do Control-C here. And what I want to do is I want to create a requirements.txt file. So I have my virtual environment active. So if I do pip freeze and then requirements.txt, you see I create this requirements.txt file here and it has Django and request. Those are the two main dependencies of this project. So now if I do Fly launch again, it should detect the Django app. So we see here detected Django app, and now I can continue with the process. So it's asking me, do I want to tweak these settings before proceeding? The answer is yes. So I'll just hit yes, and it's going to create another link for me. So I'll open that. And what I want to do in here is add a database. So if I go down to the Postgres section, we see provider, and I'll select Fly Unmanaged Postgres. And the name of it will be Pretty Printed Django Fly. All right. I'm going to say development, but you can choose production. They have two different production versions, but I'll just choose development because that's all I need for this example. And then for everything else, I don't need for this particular example. So I'm going to confirm settings, and then it tells me I can close the tab again. So let me close the tabs, go back here, and now it's completing the process. So we see provisioning one machines with image. So this is the Postgres being set up. And now we see it's just saying waiting for my deployment to become healthy. So it's just going to take a moment. All right. And now it's giving me my database credentials. And it tells me to save my credentials in a secure place because you won't be able to see them again. So that is definitely something that I can do. So let me just copy these just in case I need them later. And I'll just do credentials. And what I want to do is I want to ignore credentials in the Docker ignore. So credentials.txt. And if I had a git ignore, I'd also put credentials.txt in here. But I'm just putting these in here just as a reference. I don't actually need them for anything outside of this example, but just so you can see the information like the password, the host name, the database name is still the same. All that is working correctly. So it's still installing. And here, let me copy this database URL as well. So there we have a database URL. And once it's done, we'll be able to continue. Okay, so after a while, this error will appear. And the main reason why this error appears is because it can't start the app properly. And the reason why it can't start the app is because it's trying to start it with gUnicorn, and I don't have gUnicorn installed yet. So what I can do is pip install gUnicorn, and then pip freeze requirements.txt to recreate the requirements.txt. So inside of here, we should see gUnicorn. And then I can do fly deploy. So I don't have to do fly launch anymore. And then it will try to deploy the app again, but this time it's going to use the new requirements.txt file to install gUnicorn, and then it's going to try to use gUnicorn to run the app. So let's see if it works this time. Okay, so it just completed the deploy and it gives me this URL down here. So basically it's the name of my directory.fly.dev. If someone's already using that name, then it'll be something different. But in my case, this name is unique. So I'll go ahead and open this link and we get an error. So it said that I may need to add my URL to allowed hosts. So if you're familiar with deploying Django apps, then you know that this is something that needs to be done. So let me just go ahead and copy this. And I need to think like, how am I going to get this into my project? So if I go to my settings.py, so example settings.py, I can go to allowed host here and just paste it in like this. But this isn't the best way to do it because it's not flexible. So we want to make this more flexible so we can update it without having to change the code. So I won't put it here. So what I'll do is I'll use a library in Django called Django Environ to manage my settings. So basically I'm going to put my important settings in environment variables, and then the settings.py will load those environment variables. So I can set those environment variables in my dev environment and on fly. So let me go ahead and install that library. So it's called Django Environ. So pip install Django Environ. And every time we install something, we just need to update requirements.txt. So it eventually ends up on fly. And then inside of settings.py, let me go ahead and remove this at the top. I'll import OS, I'll import Environ, and then I will set up Django Environ. So basically I want to start under a base directory here. So I'll do env equals environ.E env. And then I want to set a setting for debug because that's kind of a special value. It needs to be true or false. So with this is I'll say debug is going to be a Boolean and it defaults to false, right? So if I don't pass in a debug value anywhere, it's going to set debug equal to false. And we'll see how that works in a second. And then what I want to do is I want to say environ.env.read env. So this is just telling it where to read an environment file in my local directory. I want to do os.path join. I'm going to join the base directory, which is why we're putting this code under base directory. I'm going to join that to .env. So I don't have my env file yet, but I'm going to add it in a second. So I don't have my env file yet. So let me go ahead and create it. So .env in the root of the project, and I'll just set up the keys that I know that I need without putting the values. So I know I need a secret key. I know I need debug. I know I need allowed hosts. I know I need database URL, and I know I need my YouTube API key, right? So I'm using the YouTube API to get the data for the videos that I'm saving. The database is where I'm saving those videos. Allowed hosts is to cover the error that we just saw, and then debug mode should be obvious, and secret key is just like a secret key. So let me go over to settings.py and I'll just move over these values. So I'm going to take the secret key and just paste it. Obviously, you can update your secret key in a real app, but I'm just copying and pasting over. For debug mode, I'll set it as true. And then for the allowed host, what I can do is I can pass like a list of things. So localhost and 127.0.0.1. So this is so the app will run in my local environment because env is only active in my local environment. When I deploy to fly, these values will be set somewhere else, but in my local environment, it's just env. For the database URL, it's going to be SQLite, db SQLite 3 to be the file that I have. So this database file here, this is the location of it, and the driver is SQLite. And then I need my YouTube API key, which I'll put in there in a second. So let's go to settings.py. And what I want to do is I want to replace the values here. So for example, this secret key string with env and then the name of the key. So in this case, secret key. And then for debug, just env debug like that. For allowed hosts, it's going to be a little bit different. So this is supposed to be a list. So instead of just env, it's going to be env.list. The first argument is going to be the name, so allowed hosts. And then the second argument is going to be some default. So I just want the default to be an empty list. And then if I go down to databases, instead of having databases like this, I'm going to remove the value of default and I'm going to replace it with env.db. So what this does is it finds the database URL, so this here, and it converts it to the same format that it just was. So if I undo, it's going to automatically convert it to look like this. It's going to have engine as SQLite3 and the name as the location of my database. And then if I use Postgres, which I will later, it's going to update the engine to be Postgres, and it's going to put like the username, password, host, and all those things. It's going to do it automatically if I just fill in the database URL. So env.db is all I need here. And then if I go down to the YouTube API key, I can update that as well. Okay, so now let me make sure that the app still works in my local environment. So Python manage.py run server. So we see here I get a warning and it's complaining about the location of the database. So I just forgot a slash. It should be 3 slashes. So let me go ahead and try that again. And no issues this time. So I'll open up the app and we see the app appears here. And just to test it out, I'll change debug to false and I'll remove the allowed hosts. And we see I get this error settings.allowed hosts if debug is false. So we know that part is working. So I can set it back to what it was. Now I want to add the same secrets to Fly. So like I said before, this env file is just for my local environment, but I want to update it on Fly as well. So to do that, I can do Fly secrets sets and then allowed hosts equals. And then in my case, the allowed host is going to be this. So Django fly deploy example.fly.dev. So let's go ahead and set that. So it's not localhost, it's not 127.0.0.1 because this is on the server itself. So I need to put that as the allowed host. And this is just a comma separated string. So with one thing, it's just one item in a list with no comma, but as soon as I add something else, I can add a comma and I don't need any spaces. But for this case, my allowed host is just going to be one thing. I don't need to set the secret key because the secret key has already been set for me. And I also don't need to set debug because in production, I want it to default to false. So I'm not going to put a production value in there. I'll go ahead and put my YouTube API key. So fly secret sets, then YouTube API key equals. All right. So with all of that, let's try deploying again. So fly deploy and let's see what happens. So I'm going to wait for it to rebuild everything and deploy it and we'll see what it looks like. Okay. So the app has been deployed again. So let me go here and refresh. And now notice when I refresh, like it's not loading the page and it finally loads something, which is just this black screen. So it's not showing the debug information anymore because debug mode is no longer on. So that's good because this is production, but I need to know what happened. Like something is going wrong with this. So I need to find out what happened. So what I can do is I can go back to the terminal and let's try fly logs. Right. So I ran fly logs and looking at the fly logs here, let's see if I can find out what the issue is. So there are a lot of errors here and it looks like it's continuing to try to reload the app because it's failing. But I see here it's failing like on the DB engine part. So this logging isn't very helpful, but it is enough for me to notice that it's having trouble loading the database. And the main reason why I can think of that happening is because there is no database driver. So database URL on Fly is Postgres. So I want to make sure I can run Postgres. So I need to install a Postgres driver. So the one I typically use is cyclepg2-binary, but there are other ones. This is the one that I use and it should work for our purposes. And then pip freeze requirements.txt. And then I want to do fly deploy again. So with the driver installed, I'm going to allow it to redeploy, and then I'll see if it's able to connect to the database. And also, because I turned debug mode on, I should be able to see the exact error in production. Okay, so it's been redeployed. So let's go back here and refresh. And now, because I have debug mode on, we can see the error. So right now it says the relation app video doesn't exist. So that's simply because the videos haven't been created in the Postgres database. So now it's successfully connected to the Postgres database. But because I haven't created the tables in that Postgres database yet, it's giving me this error. So normally the way that you create tables in a database is running Python manage.py and then migrate. And we've already done that in my local environment. That's why I have a db.sqlite3 file. But to do that on the server, I need to go on to the server and then run the command. So to do that, I can use fly ssh console. So this will log into the server and then allow me to use the console. And then from here, what I want to do is I want to do Python manage.py migrate. So now we see it applies all the migrations. Let me go ahead and exit this. And then if I go back to the app and refresh, we see that the app appears to be working out. So that means that the database table was created successfully and I can continue. But now we see another problem. So this app does not have the same styles as my original, right? So I have some bootstrap styles here, but in this one, I have nothing. So what I need to do is I need to get the static files to work, because by default, static files aren't going to work in a production environment on a service like this. So what I can do is first, let me set debug back to false before I forget. So fly secrets set, and then debug equals false. And then what I'll do is inside of settings.py, I'm going to set up something for white noise. So white noise is a library that allows you to use static files in production. It takes care of the hard work of setting up static files for you. Just install it and it basically starts working. So it's middleware. So I just need to add it to middleware. And the place that you add it is after security middleware. So here I'll do white noise dot middleware dot white noise middleware. So capital W, capital N, capital M. And then I need to install it. So pip install white noise. And every time I install something, I need to update my requirements.txt. So pip freeze requirements.txt. And then what I need to do is somewhere in here, let's say around static URL, I'll just set the static root. So this is where it's going to put my static files directory. So static root equals, and I'll have it be base directory / and then let's say static files. Right, so now I can run Python manage.py collect static. And then it's going to put all my static files in this static files folder. And then white noise is going to serve the static files from this folder here. So it's going to take the static files from all the apps that I have. I just happen to have one, but if I had more than one app defined, it's going to take all those. And it actually has the admin stuff as well. So the admin is an app that is enabled, but I didn't create myself. And it puts it in the static files directory. So now I can do fly deploy again, and then we'll see if my styles are working on the production app. Okay, so the app has been deployed again, and now let's refresh, and I get another error. So let's go ahead and see what that is. So let's look at the fly logs, and let's see if there's anything that jumps out. And it says no module named white noise middleware. So let me make sure that I spelled it correctly. Let's go up to the middleware. And I see what happened here. So I forgot to put the comma at the end. So it's kind of combining it with the next line. So what I can do is I can redeploy. So fly deploy again, and then we'll check. Okay, so it's been updated. Refreshing here. And now it loads and we see the styles are here correctly. So now let's try to save a video. So I will put in a YouTube video URL and hit save. And then we see CSRF verification failed. So the reason why this happens is because I need a configuration value for CSRF trusted origins. So I'll put that under allowed host. So CSRF underscore trusted underscore origins. And then that would be env.list and then CSRF trusted origins. And then this is a list. So it's default going to be that. And then inside of here, I can add the configuration value. So CSRF trusted origins equals. And then for this, you need the scheme. So HTTP or HTTPS. So I'll do localhost and then HTTP://127.0.0.1. So that's what I need in my dev environment. In production, I need to do fly secrets. So fly secrets set, and then CSRF trusted origins equals, and then HTTPS, and then the rest of my URL. So Django-fly deploy example.fly.dev. So basically exactly the same thing here. So I'll set that, and it's going to redeploy with that new value. Okay, so now let me go back to the app and refresh. And I will try adding a video again. And although I have the configuration value, I changed settings.py, so I need to do a complete deploy again because one of the files changed. So let's do fly deploy this time. And then we'll wait for it to deploy again. Okay, so now let's go over here and try again. Save video, and now we can see the video. So the form is working, the CSRF token is working, everything is fine now. So before, I had to turn on debug mode because I couldn't see the errors in the logs. And the reason why I couldn't see the errors in the logs is because I don't have any logging set up. So when you turn off debug mode, it doesn't actually log the errors anywhere. So I want to set up some logging. So I have some logging in here that is just really basic logging. So what it does is it just outputs everything to the console, which we'll be able to see on fly logs. So the handler is going to be a stream handler. It's going to log to the console here, and we'll be able to see it. So very basic logging setup. There's nothing special with this one. And to see this working, what I'll do is I'll say fly secrets set debug equal false, and I can put this in stage so it doesn't deploy right away. And then fly secrets set allowed hosts equal to just nothing, so it fails. I'll stage that as well. And then because I updated settings.py, I need to deploy. So fly deploy, and we'll wait for it to deploy again. Okay, so it's been deployed. So I'll go here and refresh, and now we see this error here, bad requests. So I'll do fly logs. And looking here, let's see if we can see the error, which should be something about allowed host, but this looks like the old one. So it looks like it's just taking a moment to update. So I'll wait. And there we go. We see invalid HTTP hosts, and we see the allowed host issues. So now we can see the log for the errors, so we don't have to turn on debug mode anymore. So let me go ahead and get out of the logs, and then I can update the secrets to use the appropriate allowed hosts again. So allowed hosts equals Django fly deploy example.fly.dev. Okay, so now our app is working completely in production, and next thing I want to do, and the final thing I want to do, is I want to set up a domain. So I bought a domain called prettyprinted.online. So I use the service Namecheap, so it looks like this. But regardless of the service that you use, you're going to be able to find some kind of advanced DNS page or just like a regular DNS page, and it's going to look something like this. So this is what you're looking for. And then what you want to do is you want to go back to your terminal, and you want to do fly IPs list. And it's going to give you a couple of IP addresses. So it's going to give you a version 6 IP and a version 4. So I'm going to copy the version 4 one first, and then I'll go over to my DNS settings, and I'll add a new record here under host records. So add a new record, and we're looking to add a record. The host is going to be an @, and the IP address is going to be what I just copied. And then I'll just click the check to save. And then I'll take the other IP address, so the version 6 one, and copy that one. And then do something similar. So add a record. This one's going to be AAAA. Host is going to be add again, and then the IP address. Click save. And then it should update automatically. And then using the command line tool, I need to create an SSL certificate. So I can do fly certs, add, and then the domain. So prettyprinted.online. So I'll add that. And it says my certificate is being issued, and I can check on the progress. I can do fly certs check and then prettyprinted.online. And we see that the certificate has been issued. So it was able to find that I own that domain because I set my IP address on that domain, and it was able to create an SSL certificate for me. So now let's go to the app and let's try doing prettyprinted.online. Running it, and we see the bad requests again. And the reason why the bad request is happening is because I have a new domain. So I'm no longer using the fly domain. I'm using my own. So let me go ahead and update my allowed host and CSRF trusted origin. Okay, so fly secret set, and then allowed host is going to be prettyprinted.online. And I'll just stage this one. And then we want to do fly secret set CSRF underscore trusted underscore origins equal to HTTPS. And then we'll have prettyprinted online at the end. So now I'll deploy those 2 secret updates. Okay, it's been deployed. And refresh. And we see the app appears. Let me try saving a video. And we see that the app works well. So what I cover in this video are like the basics for most apps. Obviously, some apps have more things. You can have like Redis. You can store your static files or your media files to like an object store. You can add compression for your static files. Like you can do so much more stuff, but these are the basics that are going to cover most apps. And if you have to do anything more, then the process of doing those things will be along the same lines of what we've done in this video. So if you want to compare the deployment methods between Fly and something else like Render or to your own server, then you can check out other videos on my channel to learn how to deploy your Django apps there instead.